This is our 16th lesson, and we'll be going through this series on the introduction to the Bible. Last lesson, we looked at writing materials, and we looked at fragile type writing materials, or writing materials that don't last as long as some of the other materials. We're looking at more permanent writing materials in this lesson. We looked at papyrus, vellum, and originally that was calf skin or antelope skin. Parchment was originally sheep or goat skin. Now, of course, the Jews wouldn't use pig skin at all, but pig skin could be used. But I don't know where it's ever been used. Wax, wood, and frequently what would be a wood tablet, a smooth piece of wood that we put wax on it and they'd write on it. Various kinds of waxes. Clay tablets and stone. We know, of course, the most famous one would be the 10 tablets, the 2 tablets of stone with the 10 commandments, the Decalogue. And there are other stones in the scriptures as well. Metals, leads, gold, silver, bronze. Some of these metals. Some of these are fragile, like papyrus and vellum, parchment, wax, and wood. The Egyptians wrote on linen cloth, and so that would be fragile. Of course, in Egypt, it's very dry climate, so those things would tend to survive and last. Some of the materials are not fragile, like clay tablets and pottery and stone and metals. Of course, the metals would, if they're precious metals, might be melted down for the precious metal, for the gold or silver in them. Some of these materials have lasted several thousand years in very good shape. So we see that occurring. Writing was done on a number of different materials. Some of these writing materials are easily destroyed. Paper, for example, deteriorates rapidly. Wood and leather deteriorate more slowly than paper, and baked clay tablets, stone, and pottery are relatively permanent. There was a time in books in the United States, in the Western world, that the paper didn't have acid in it. And so some of the books written in the 1700s are still in good shape. But a book written in the 19th century, in the early 20th century, will deteriorate pretty rapidly because they have acid in the paper. In the process of making the paper, they used acid. And it would break the paper down. It would get brittle and break and just fragment. I know doctoral dissertations, at least when I wrote mine, had to be on acid-free paper when they're printed so that they would last for long periods of time. But paper will deteriorate, particularly. So you get a book written in the late 1800s, and it may deteriorate pretty quickly. So paper does. Leather deteriorates more slowly than paper, but it does deteriorate. Baked clay tablets and stone tend to last for long periods of time. Pottery, wrote on broken pieces of pottery, would last. Clay tablets, we're going to look at some here in a minute. And they would bake the clay in an oven, a kiln, and make it like a brick. And writing was preserved, thus the tablets were broken. They last for many millennium and thousands of years. Ostraca, and that's the ostracon. Ostracon is the Greek word for pottery, and so they're called ostraca. And it's the Greek word for a shell, which began to be applied to pottery later. Stone tablets, of course, the 10 commandments are very prominent there. And the Moabite stone, we'll see a picture of it. The Siloam inscription and the Rosetta Stone, all of these have been very famous and very useful. And of course, on metal, lead, gold, silver, and bronze, writing's been on them. The Epic of Gilgamesh, it was probably first written around 2500 BC, somewhere thereabouts. Tablet 11 has an account of the flood, but the actual copy that we have of it is about 400 or 500 BC, the actual date of it. And there are fragments of it just pieces of it that date back earlier. Okay. That's important because the atheists claim that Moses got his account of the flood from the Epic of Gilgamesh. Okay, so that's another problem we run into. Cyrus's cylinder, in my logic and debate book, I deal with this Epic of Gilgamesh and this claim that Moses got his account of the flood from that Epic of Gilgamesh. Okay. Cyrus's cylinder, we'll have a picture of it in about 540 BC. And much of what was recorded in Ezra 1, verses 1 through 4 is found on the cylinder. Not exactly word for word, but pretty close to it. Right? So it's pretty close. A tablet celebrating Nebuchadnezzar's achievements. And he was not one to hold back from bragging. That got him in trouble, remember. But the tablet celebrating his achievements in 609 BC is the clay tablet. And Cyrus's cylinder is a clay tablet as well. Jehoiachin's rations tablet is a tablet with King Jehoiachin's rations, what he was to be fed. So we know that they mentioned him, and so he's a Bible character, and he's mentioned on these tablets. And he's from Judah, of course. It's king of Judah. It was taken. Here's the Epic of Gilgamesh. And what they would do, if you know what a standard screwdriver is, and I'm pretty sure most of you guys know what a standard screwdriver is. There's a Phillips screwdriver and a standard screwdriver, but it would much like a standard screwdriver. And they would take it and take this soft clay, and it just wasn't real runny clay, but it was still soft. And then they would impress it. They would push in with this little scribe, and the scribe would take this little stylus, a lot like a standard screwdriver, and just push in and make dents in the clay. And these dents, then they would twist it and turn it and make letters out of it. These were letters, and they could read it. And then they would bake that tablet in a kiln, and then it would be as hard as a rock. It'd be like a brick. And it would last for thousands of years. And so we do have, and of course, this one's been broken. So you can see, and I'll move my mouse around, you see up here where it's been broken, up here and down here and over here. So we have pieces of it, of this Epic of Gilgamesh. Okay. So there's, unfortunately, we don't have it in this folder. Cyrus's cylinder was a cylinder, and it kind of looks like a corn cob to me. With corn on it. It's yellow, but of course it's not corn. But what we have is each of these lines across here that represents a row of writing, and of course their writing, I believe it was Semitic, and so it went from right to left. But again, this is this form of writing a tad. Black. We don't have the form of it here. Well, there's a name for it. We'll get to it later. There's the cylinder. It's been broken off, but what we have here is the writings, and they can read it. There are people who can read that stuff, and I haven't worried about trying to read that. But they can read it and decipher it, and it's pretty much what the Bible says. So it fits in quite readily with what the scriptures have in Ezra. There's a cylinder. These are cuneiform tablets. That's what it is, format writing, cuneiform writing. And this is a tablet celebrating Nebuchadnezzar's achievements. Of course, it's been broken, so they put it back together. Found it broken and put the pieces back together like a puzzle. And so they probably lost pieces of it in here. Some of it was lost. But they can put most of the writing back in and add in what was probably there. Jehoiachin's rations tablet, the clay size is 9.2 centimeters. Now, 2.5 centimeters makes an inch. So 20.5 centimeters would be 10 inches. So this is about 9 centimeters. It's about 5 inches high. and about 10.5 centimeters wide. So that's the height and width of it. Akkadian language in cuneiform script, created in the Neo-Babylonian period. Neo is Greek for Naos, is Greek for new. So that's the New Babylon. So there was two different Babylonian empires. There's an old and new Babylonian empire. And this period was from 595 to 570 BC. They listed as BCE, I'm quoting them. They changed that to before Common Era. They don't like to have Christ in it, before Christ. I don't like to talk about Christ. The atheists don't. Discovered within 1899 to 1917 near Ishtar. The present location is the Museum of Ancient Near East, Pergamon Museum in Berlin. Room 6, identification bat 16378. I got all this. Sure, you know exactly where it lives found. Any questions there? There's a whole libraries of these tablets that have been discovered, and they're starting to try to decipher them. I predict what they'll do is they'll scan these things off and let the computers do it eventually. And the computers will work it out probably. Artificial intelligence probably will be used to do it. And so they may do it quickly when they get started good. Writing on pottery, the Greek word ostrakon, and pronounced ostrakon, word for clay, or baked clay or pottery, or the pieces of broken pottery, you can refer to them as well. Even in our times, I've seen ceramic plates and other ceramic objects with writings on them. Some people will have a ceramic plate, and it'll have a verse of scripture or some cute little poem on it. And so you'll see that. Right here is a piece of pottery with writing on it. It's hard for me to read it. I can't tell what language it is because I can't see it clearly enough. But it kind of looks like it might be Greek, but I can't tell because I can't see it clearly enough. It looks like there's a sigma and some other letters there. Again, I don't know what it is, but 4 letters to visor, copied on ostrakon. Might be another language. Ostraka are different sizes and shapes. This is pottery again. And the more extant is Luke 22, verse 40 through 71, which runs over 10 pieces. They contain from 2 to 9 verses each, cover Matthew 27, 31 through 32. Here are the passages that we have on ostraka pottery. And so those are pretty, they're not going to deteriorate very rapidly. Okay. The pottery, if it doesn't get broken again, will just last for thousands of years. This is 2nd century AD, 7th century. That's pretty early. And then we have the Well-Blumdale prism. It's dated at 2100 BC. The 10 Commandments are written on stone. I date the Exodus about 1450 BC. In rough terms, 1500 BC in rounded numbers. God written on plastered stones after the children of Israel entered Canaan in 1400 BC. We'll show it on scripture. And the stone on which the temple inscription was written. 9th century BC, we'll see a picture of it. And this has been discovered recently. This is a recent discovery. And it's very, very exciting to me. The Moabite stone, dated 850 BC. Siloam inscription dated 7. Behistun rock. Now we have pictures of all of this. We'll show them in a minute. Behistun rock, 516 BC. The Rosetta Stone, 196 BC, from which they were able to decipher 2 unknown languages, or 2 unknown writings, sets of writings. It was a Well-Blumdale prism. It contains a record of Sumerian kings. It's dated 2100 BC. And it includes kings who lived before the flood, and that attributes to them extremely long lives. gets a little absurd. That's what it looks like there. And again, it's cuneiform writing. It's the best picture I could get of it. Took it off the internet. Here's another picture of it, a different part of it. It's a prism. So it's pretty much like one corn cob, one that I called it, looked like a corn cob. So it'd be like that. That service is what you write. Commandments, we don't know what they look like. There's many that make what they think they look like. And he gave to Moses when he had made an end of communing with him upon Mount Sinai the 2 tablets of testimony, tables of stone written with the finger of God. Now then, in Exodus 34:1, and the Lord Jehovah God, that's probably better translated Yahweh, said unto Moses, hew thee 2 tablets of stone, tables of stone like unto the first, and I will write upon the tables the words that were in the first tablets which thou breakest. Remember, when he came down, they had corrupted themselves so much he threw the tablets of stone down and broke. And so they went back up and he hewed out the tablets again, and God wrote them again. So God wrote with his finger, with the finger of God. That's probably the finger of God. God miraculously wrote them. That's what that's saying. And Exodus 34:28, again, the 10 Commandments, he was there with the Lord Jehovah 40 days, 40 nights. And neither eat bread nor drink water, and he wrote upon the tables the words of the covenant, the 10 Commandments. So now we have the writing of the 10 Commandments on these tables. So we're all aware of that one. A lot of members of the church don't know and haven't read carefully enough to see that the law of God was written on plastered stones also. And so we'll look at this in Deuteronomy 27. It shall be on the day when ye shall cross over the Jordan unto the land where Jehovah thy God giveth thee. Thou shalt set up great stones and plaster them with plaster. Thou shalt write upon them all the words of this law, and thou passest over, that thou mayest go in and unto the land which Jehovah thy God giveth thee, a land flowing with milk and honey, as Jehovah thy God, the God of thy fathers, hath promised thee. So now you're to write these on great stones. You put plaster on them, and that would be, of course, to make it where they could write on it. So they wrote on the plaster. It goes on in Joshua. Yes, this is Deuteronomy. Joshua built an altar unto Jehovah on these plastered stones, the God of Israel, in Mount Nebo, as Moses, servant of Jehovah, commanded the children of Israel, as it is written in the book of the law of Moses, an altar of hewn stones, on which no man hath listed any of any iron, and they offered thereof burnt offerings unto the Lord and sacrificed peace offerings. Remember, your altar that they had was to take stones that God had left them. And so they weren't to hew the stones or form them in any way, take them the way God had them. And so, and he wrote there upon the stones a copy of the law of Moses, which he wrote in the presence of the children of Israel. I think this is that plaster that had been laid out for us. That's my conclusion. Any questions there? And that plaster has been long gone. Okay. Now we have the Moabite stone in about 850 BC. And this is what it looked like. It was written in the Moabite language. The Moabite language was closely related to Hebrew because the Moabites and the Ammonites were both descendants of Lot. There were Lot's descendants of Lot's 2 sons, and so they spoke Hebrew, and Lot did, and so their language would be related to the Hebrew language. But this is about 850 BC. Now this stone, a translation of it is, I'm Meshach, king of Moab, made this monument to Chemosh. Well, Chemosh was an idol to commemorate deliverance from Israel. And this would be Israel, the northern 10 tribes. My father reigned over Moab 30 years, and I reigned over after my father Omri. Omri, king of Israel, oppressed Moab many days, and his son Ahab and his son after him. Now, in parentheses, it doesn't name his son in the zone. So they added it in. The son of Ahab was the son of Omri, okay, after him. But I made war against the king of Israel and drove him out and took his cities, Medeba, Tarath, Nebo, Jahaz. But you built one who waged war against me. I destroyed these cities and devoted the spoil to Chemosh and the women and girls to Ashtar. So the women and girls were made temple slaves, prostitutes to Ashtar. And I built Korah with prisoners from Israel. So he told what he did. Now this is the account of much of this is given in the Old Testament. Right? And right here in 2 Kings 3:4, now Mesha, king of Moab, was a sheep master, and he rendered unto the king of Israel the wool of 100,000 lambs and 100,000 rams. But it came to pass when Ahab was dead that the king of Moab rebelled against the king of Israel. So it occurred at the death of Ahab. And 2 Kings 3, verses 4 through 27, you get more of the biblical account of Mesha's rebellion. So I won't go into that, but you can read that for yourself. But the account comes pretty close to saying the same thing. Of course, the Moabites are going to put a spin on it for their purposes. And of course, God's record of it doesn't have a spin on it. It's just tells it like it is. And questions or comments? Now here's the stone tablet that's been discovered recently. And I want you to look at it. It's pretty hard to see it. This is the best copy I can get of it. I couldn't get a better copy. But this is in stone tablet of the Temple Mount. And this has been discovered in our lifetime. It's written in Phoenician script. So here's the way the letters are written, Phoenician script. Here's another look at it. You can see the script a little more closely. So you see some of those letters. We'll move my mouse around. See this letter right here. This letter over here. Let's see if we can find them on this. Right there's one of them. Let's go back and see if it looks like, this one looks like a triangle. Delta. That kind of looks like a dollar. Okay. So I can see some of those letters there. You can, if you start looking at it, you see them. It was erected by King Jehoash of Judah in the 9th century BC. That's pretty early. And of course, it's written in Phoenician script, and they didn't change the script from Phoenician script to Aramaic script until about 400 BC, when they were in Babylonian captivity and Assyrian captivity during that time. It was erected by King Jehoash. This is also recorded in 2 Kings 12, 7 through 17. My understanding this stone is a quote of 2 Kings 12, 7 through 17. That's what I read, all the writing I can find on it. That's a quote right out of 2 Kings 12, verses 7 through 17, put on that scroll, on that stone. The stone was discovered in 2003. That's 21 years ago. And its authenticity has been established by various experts, not questioned. No question about its authenticity. That's pretty good. So we know that book of 2 Kings existed in the 9th century BC. We have it. We have evidence of it. Written in Phoenician script, as I pointed out. Here's the Siloam inscription written about 700 BC during the time of just before the northern, right after the northern 10 tribes went into captivity. And this is Hezekiah had caused this to be written down. What Hezekiah did, we get it from other sources, is there was a pool or a spring outside the gates, outside the walls of Jerusalem, and they would get their water from this. Well, if an army come in and surrounded the city, we couldn't get out to the pool. So what he did is he dug a tunnel. He had to dig a tunnel through the rock. They chiseled the tunnel through the rock and then covered up that pool and put a ceiling on it and covered it with soil and the crop, grass and trees and other stuff grow above it. So now that spring feeds through the tunnel, comes out inside Jerusalem. And so they always had water during the siege. They wouldn't starve them for water. Any questions? This is the inscription that describes what happened there. And if you go to Jerusalem, you can go through that. You can go through that tunnel. It's pretty, well, it's kind of a closed space, I've been told. I'm not going to go in it. Translation of the inscription is, it's written in Hebrew. And this is in the Phoenician script, remember. This is the story of the boring through. Wow. And then what's in brackets there is something in italics in the Bible. They added it to her explanation. While the tunnelers, the pickaxe each toward his fellow, and while 3 cubits remained yet. Cubit is from the end of from your elbow to the end of your middle finger, about 18 inches for most men, to be bored through. So there were 3 cubits apart. And so was heard the voice of a man calling his fellow. But there was a split or crack and overlap in the rock in the right hand. So the rock was split a little bit so he could hear him talking through there. When the tunnel was driven through, the tunnelers hewed the rock, each man toward his fellow, pickaxe against pickaxe. And the water flowed from the spring toward the reservoir for 1,200 cubits. And the height of the rock above the head of the tunnelers was 100 cubits. So it was flowing downhill. Just gravity fed it this. And so the spring, the spring fed water. As conduit, it's called. In the Bible, it's mentioned. And of course, we have evidence that it was there. And now the rest of the acts of Hezekiah and all his might, and how he made the pool and the conduit and brought water to the city. Are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah? So right here, this is written. It is the tunnel whereas was found the Siloam inscription. When Hezekiah, let's go to his conduit. When Hezekiah saw that Sennacherib was come, that he would have purpose to fight against Jerusalem, he took counsel with his princes and mighty men to stop the waters of the fountains which are outside without the city, and they helped him. So they stopped the fountains and plugged up the fountains so that the enemy couldn't get water. But they were already getting water through the tunnel, through the conduit, which they had disguised and camouflaged it by putting a roof over top of it and by putting soil on it so grass and other things would grow in that soil. So they were gathered, much people together, and they stopped all the fountains of the brook that flowed in the midst of the land, saying, why should the kings of Assyria come and find much water? Make them have trouble getting water to drink, but we won't have trouble. And Hezekiah's conduit brought water into the pool of Siloam. When I am in the world, I am the light of the world. When he had thus spoken, he spat on the ground and made clay of the spittle and flooded his eyes with the clay. And said to him, go wash in the pool of Siloam, which is by interpretation sent. He went away, therefore, and washed and came seeing. I think the word sent is from the idea that it had been sent from through the conduit down to that pool. I think that's where the term sent comes from, the best I can tell. Questions or comments there? Here's the Behistun rock, and it's in, I think, 3 different languages. And the thing is, if they can read one of the languages, and these are writings of the same thing in other languages, this gives them a clue to how they can translate the other languages. So there's a pretty extensive amount of writing, so it's helped them to decide. There's also called a relief carving, and it's like a statue, but it's just a part that's sticking out is just half of the statue. I want you to see something here. Here's one of their kings. He's always bigger than everybody else, the king is. He's got his foot on this other man, and we're going to get a closer look at it here in just a minute. So he's conquered him, and all of these other people he's conquered are smaller than him. Notice he and others as men that work with him are bigger than them. And so that's the way they described it. Discovered in 1835, about 200 miles northeast of Babylon. Contains carvings and writings giving the account of the conquest of King Darius, king of Persia, Ezra 6. These writings are in Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian. So now we can get the writings of these other sources. We can get them and read them as well. It's unlocked the key to reading the Elamite and the Babylonian. They couldn't read the Babylonian writings before then. So they've begun to read them now. I rule this to God's providence because we needed to be able to read those writings. Let me give you a little side point. The atheists used to claim, well, the Bible lists Belshazzar as a king of Babylon, and there's no historical evidence that there ever was a king Belshazzar, so the Bible is fictitious. But it's labeled, it's got an error. But what they found out was that Belshazzar served as co-regent with his father Nabonidus for about 5 or 6, 7 years toward the end of the empire. And he was in Babylon when it fell. Nabonidus, his father, was gone out of the city, wasn't there. But he was the second ruler in the kingdom, and that explains why he offered Daniel the third rulership. He'd make him third ruler, because he couldn't make him second ruler, because that's what he was. So he made him third ruler, going to make him third ruler in the kingdom, if he deciphered the handwriting on the wall. So that explains why it was going to make him third ruler. But once they deciphered this, they could read some documents they had, his writing, in clay tablets. And once they deciphered it, they found out Nabonidus had a son that he listed, and it was Belshazzar. It's a man that we see in the Bible. The Bible's always right. And if you believe God, you had to believe it was right. There was a logical fallacy in their reasoning. However, we haven't found evidence that Belshazzar existed, therefore he didn't exist. Well, that's a logical fallacy of denying the antecedent. If we have found there's evidence that he existed, then he existed. We have not found evidence that he existed, therefore he didn't exist. Well, if we found evidence he did exist, but you don't deny the antecedent, that's a logical fallacy. Any questions or comments there? So the Elamite writings, now they can read them too. And the Persian, they already had it, well, they could read it. This unlocked the key to reading the Elamite and Babylonian language. Here's the Behistun stone, a closer up look at it in history. You can see this king, he's taller than his guys that are under him. He's the biggest, he's a big fella. And he depicts himself that way. He's got his foot on this other man he's conquered. And he's showing his rulership over him. These other men have their hands tied behind them, and he's going to do what he wants to them. So he's conquered them. Right? This almost looks like one of the symbols. This looks like an eagle here, an eagle feet, and a tail of eagle. And it almost looks like a Nazi symbol. But I find that interesting. Okay. The Nazis may have picked it up from there. We don't know. Right. We have the Rosetta Stone. It had two different languages, and it had Greek, which they could read, and then it had the writings, two different writings of the Egyptians, the hieroglyphics and the demonic. Now, the demonic is the writings of the common people. What they did, the common people, they took the Greek letters and they made their own language out of them using those letters. And so it was written in Greek letters, but it wasn't Greek. So they made their own language up, and it used Greek characters, Greek letters, and they couldn't read it. And then they had, so when they got this stone, this Rosetta Stone, it's kind of a red color, like a rose color. That's where the term comes from, rose rock. It's got a reddish color, pinkish colored rock, reddish pink. And so what they did is they took the Greek, took the other ones, and then they could read they eventually were able to read this, decipher these other languages. Stone had three sets of inscriptions in two languages: Greek, the language of the rulers of Egypt at that time, Ptolemies; Egyptian, both hieroglyphic and the language of the priest and the demonic, the language of the common people of Egypt. Became the tool for deciphering both the demonic script and the hieroglyphic script, and it became quite valuable to archaeologists working in Egypt. Before that, they couldn't read the hieroglyphic script. And the Mormons, the founder of the Mormon Church, Joseph Smith, he come up with this idea that the Book of Abraham had this stuff in it that he claimed, and he made some claims about it. And lo and behold, after they were able to decipher it, they found out he was just way out of bounds. He wasn't even near close what he said. False prophet, that's what it proved him to be. But that's another study in itself. Right? But that showed he's a false prophet. Right? See when that was discovered, the Rosetta Stone. It was written in 196 BC. I forgot exactly the date when they discovered it, but it was after, I believe it was after Joseph Smith wrote his foolishness. Okay. A number of sources of information about the Bible, and even Bible texts that are written in relatively permanent writings, ostrich-cut pottery. And if we can get 8 or 10 verses on a piece of pottery, and that we can date that pottery early, that's pretty good. Pretty good evidence that that text existed at that time. That's the way it was. Make clay tablets, made like bricks. They're going to last for several millennium. Stone and metal. That should end our discussion of various types of materials. Are there any questions or comments?